Some women light up the room the second they arrive. Others, the room breathes a sigh of relief the moment they leave. Have you ever met someone who looked like a dream, but left your soul feeling like a storm passed through? This isn't about bitterness, it's about vision. About finally seeing clearly what you once excused in the name of charm, chemistry, or compassion. Let's get one thing straight. This video isn't about blame, it's about clarity. Because if you've been through enough in life, and I know you have, then you've already learned the hard way. Not every woman who smiles at you is smiling for you. And not every hand you hold is truly reaching back. Time is too precious. Peace is too hard-earned. And your energy, it's not a gift you hand out like candy on Halloween. Especially not to women who confuse you, drain you, or make you question your worth over and over again. They don't always show up as obvious villains. No, some of the worst damage is done by the ones who wear sweetness like a mask. The charming ones, the polished ones, the ones who seem emotionally open, but whose presence feels like walking on glass, barefoot. In this video, we're going to break down 6 unmistakable signs, 6 red flags you simply can't afford to overlook. These aren't based on judgment, they're based on wisdom. Wisdom born from experience, scars, and the kind of quiet reflection that Stoic men like Marcus Aurelius lived by. He said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." I'd argue it also depends on the people you allow into your space, into your heart, into your peace. So let's sharpen that clarity together. Ready? Let's begin. Point 1. She's always the victim. The first sign of a destructive woman is subtle. At first, so subtle, in fact, that most good men don't even notice it until they're already tangled in it. She's always the victim. And I mean, always. Doesn't matter if it's a stranger at the store, a lifelong best friend, or 3 of her ex-husbands. Somehow, in every single story, she's the one who was hurt. She's the one who was betrayed. She's the one who was misunderstood. You sit across from her, you listen, you nod. At first, maybe you even admire her vulnerability. You think, wow, she's been through a lot. Maybe she just needs someone to finally treat her right. That's the bait. That's the hook. She's compelling. She's articulate. She paints her past in vivid brushstrokes filled with injustice and pain, always at the hands of someone else. And if you're not paying close attention, you'll miss the pattern forming right in front of your eyes. Because this isn't just about wounds. It's about manipulation. It's about control. Let me tell you about Tom. A solid man, kind-hearted, honest. After his divorce, he met a woman just like this. She seemed emotionally transparent, a breath of fresh air. She told him everything. Her ex lied, how her boss was threatened by her strength, how her family always sided with her sister. At first, Tom respected her resilience. She seemed strong, like someone who had been through hell and kept walking. But the stories never stopped, and the pattern never changed. Every person from her past, toxic. Every breakup, someone else's fault. Every job loss, unfair treatment. Every friendship, betrayal, and slowly, Tom started slipping into a role he never agreed to play. He was either the rescuer constantly validating her and fighting her battles, or the villain the moment he questioned her version of reality, or worse, asked her to look inward. That's when it hit him. She didn't want healing. She wanted a script, one where she's always the wounded angel, and you're just an extra in her drama. If you've ever been in a relationship like that, you know it doesn't matter how much love, support, or logic you bring. It's never enough, because she's not looking for partnership. She's looking for power dressed up as pity. She's not wounded, she's rehearsed. As we saw in the last chapter, a woman who constantly plays the victim isn't searching for healing, she's searching for control, and you're cast as either the savior or the scapegoat. But here's the danger. Once you buy into her version of reality, you don't just support her pain. You become the next chapter in her story of suffering. She will never take true ownership of her actions. Never stop and ask, what was my part in this? Because in her eyes, there's always someone else to blame. And if you get too close, that someone becomes you. She rewrites events like a script editor in her own movie-changing timelines, tweaking intentions, removing inconvenient truths. And suddenly, you're the man who let her down. You're the one who never really understood her. You're the villain in a story you didn't even write. It's a cycle, and it's utterly exhausting. Stoic philosophy teaches us something powerful. Here you can't control other people. You can only control yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But the woman who clings to victimhood refuses that power. She surrenders her agency to circumstance and demands that everyone else carry the emotional weight she won't take responsibility for. She drains you, not just your energy, but your patience, your perspective, and eventually your peace of mind. So what can you do? You see it clearly for what it is. You stop playing the rescuer. You start bleeding for wounds that aren't yours to heal. You stay rooted in reason, not emotion. You offer kindness, yes, but never at the cost of your boundaries. And if the pattern never changes, if the stories stay stuck on repeat, you step back, not with drama, not with anger, just distance, quietly, firmly, because Stoic wisdom teaches us something deeper. Peace is not something you find in others. Peace is something you protect within yourself. And if someone keeps pulling you into chaos, leaving isn't cruel, it's clarity. 2. She's addicted to drama, the second sign. You won't always see it with your eyes right away, but you'll feel it in your gut. She's addicted to drama, and no, we're not talking about the occasional bad day or a moment of frustration. Everyone gets overwhelmed sometimes, but this is different. This is the woman whose entire life plays out like a theatrical production, written, directed, and starring herself. When things get too calm, she'll light a match. When life feels steady, she'll find a way to shake it up. Because to her, peace is dull. Stability is suffocating. Without even realizing it, you'll be swept into a constant wave of conflict and confusion. It won't start with fire, it starts with smoke. Maybe one night, you're quiet, reflective. She tells a story, and you seem distracted. Suddenly, you're emotionally unavailable. You reply to her text a bit late. Now you're pulling away. A peaceful evening spirals into an argument you never saw coming. You spend hours explaining, apologizing for things that don't even make sense. And by the end of it, you're exhausted. But her, she looks strangely energized, because for someone addicted to drama, tension feels like fuel. It gives her a sense of control. She stirs emotion not to resolve it, but to stay in the center of attention. And you, unknowingly, become a supporting actor in her endless show. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "An angry man opens his mouth and shuts his eyes." That applies here. Because a woman addicted to drama doesn't seek truth, she seeks stimulation. She wants the feeling, the rush, the emotional high even. If it leaves destruction in its wake, and you'll start thinking you're helping, that you're stabilizing the situation. But really, you're just reacting over and over again. And little by little, that reaction becomes your habit. Your baseline. You become anxious, tense, walking on eggshells, wondering which word, look, or silence will trigger the next storm. And when a man loses his inner stillness, he loses the greatest power a Stoic can have: clarity. So what's the answer? Distance. Not always physical, at least, not right away, but emotional. Step back. Let the waves crash without rushing in to hold the shore, because the moment you stop feeding the chaos, you begin reclaiming your peace. As Epic taught us, we cannot control what others do, but we have full control over how we respond. And sometimes, the strongest response is to step back. 3. She controls through guilt. Here's something most people don't realize. Guilt is one of the most powerful tools of psychological control. In fact, research shows it activates the same parts of the brain as physical pain. That's why it weighs on your chest, why it ties your stomach in knots, why it feels heavy. And some women, the wrong women, know exactly how to use that weight against you. The third sign of a toxic woman is this: she doesn't control with threats or shouting. She controls with guilt. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible at first. Maybe she gets upset when you cancel dinner to finish a critical work project. Maybe she goes cold when you mention needing a little space to recharge. You think she's just sensitive, just needs a little reassurance. So, you cancel your plans, you rearrange your schedule, you make it right. But each time you do that, you give away a small piece of yourself. Not because it feels right, but because it feels safer than seeing that look in her eyes. You know the one, the look that silently says, "I thought I mattered more, I thought you were different." She never has to say it out loud. Her silence says enough. A sigh, a pause, a cold shoulder. That's all it takes for guilt to start doing its work. Before long, you're not making choices based on logic or personal values. You're reacting, trying to avoid that sinking feeling in your gut every time you put yourself first. And that's how she keeps control. Guilt becomes the currency, and the more you give in, the more she asks. Not through arguments, not through open demands, but through silence, through moods, through the slow withdrawal of affection. You catch yourself explaining your choices, instead of simply living them. And when you fail to meet her unspoken expectations, you suddenly become the villain in her story. Little by little, you stop being you, you start performing, acting out a version of yourself that fits her emotional script. But Stoicism offers a clear truth here. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that's the root of it. Because once you let guilt dictate your actions, you've already surrendered your freedom. Guilt clouds your judgment. It traps you in a loop of pleasing and apologizing, where your own values fade into the background. So, what's the answer? It's not anger, it's not rebellion, it's boundaries. It's choosing action from a place of reason, not fear. Giving not to avoid punishment, but because it aligns with your truth. And when she tries to pull those strings of guilt again, you don't react. You don't flinch. You remain calm, steady, grounded. Because a man who knows his values and stands in them cannot be moved by silent manipulation. That kind of man is free. And freedom is something no guilt can ever take, unless you hand it over. 4. she lacks empathy. The fourth sign is one that often stays hidden until life turns cold. She lacks empathy. And if you've lived long enough, you already know life will take a hard turn. Not if, but when. You might lose someone you love. You might face a health scare, a financial crisis, or a deep personal failure. These are the moments that reveal everything, because when life hits hard, you see clearly who is truly in your corner and who only stays when the sun is shining. A woman who lacks empathy won't be there when things get real. Or if she is, she'll be there in body, not in spirit. She won't ask, "How are you?" really. She won't pause her world to step into yours, because she can't or won't connect to pain that isn't hers. And that absence, it cuts deeper than silence, because in your lowest moments, presence matters more than words. And when she can't offer that presence, the emptiness echoes louder than any noise. For she lacks empathy at first. It's subtle. You might not even notice it until the cracks begin to show. Maybe you mention how drained you feel after a brutal week. Your words hang in the air for a moment. She glances up from her phone, half a second, then casually redirects the conversation back to her own day. Usually something trivial, something meaningless. You blink, and the moment is gone. The weight you tried to share, brushed off like dust on a shoulder. Or perhaps you open up, say something real, something personal, vulnerable, something that costs you a bit of courage. But instead of leaning in, she moves past it like it's just another sentence in a small talk exchange. It doesn't land. It doesn't register. There's a distance, and you feel it in your gut. It's not just that she doesn't understand. It's that she doesn't want to. A man I know, someone I deeply respect, once shared with me a story. After his wife passed away, he tried dating again. He met a woman who, at first, seemed caring, supportive. But when his grief truly surfaced, when the sorrow came in waves, what he needed was simple. Someone to just sit with him in the silence, to be there, quietly. No fixing, no distractions, just presence. But she couldn't. She grew uncomfortable, restless, impatient. She didn't have the emotional range to meet him where he was. So she changed the subject, offered shallow reassurances, and quickly turned the focus back to herself. Plans, her frustrations, her world. Eventually, he told me something that stuck with me. I realized I felt lonelier with her than I ever did being alone. And that's where Stoic philosophy gives us clarity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one," but I'd offer a simple addition. Don't waste time hoping someone will become something they are not. Empathy isn't a skill you can teach someone who lacks it. It's not something you can force, coax, or inspire. It's either there, or it is single. And when it's missing, you'll feel it in your bones. Truly empathetic woman doesn't need to solve your problems. She doesn't need to say much. Her presence, alone, calm, steady, sincere, is enough to remind you that you are not alone. But a woman who lacks empathy, she can sit beside you and still make you feel completely abandoned. So if you find yourself constantly making excuses for why she's emotionally distant during your most vulnerable moments, stop. Pay attention. That inner feeling is a signal, a warning. Because Stoicism teaches us not to cling to illusions, not to live in the hope of what someone could become, but to accept what is. And what is, in this case, is painfully simple. If she cannot meet you with compassion when life gets hard, she will not be there when the storms return. The solution, it's not to beg for more, It's not to argue or plead, it's to choose differently. To walk away if necessary, not in bitterness, not in anger, but with clarity. Because life is far too short to be with someone who only hears with her ears, but never listens with her heart. 5. She's obsessed with superficial things. The 5th sin is easy to miss in the beginning, is if you mistake it for confidence or ambition. But over time, it becomes draining, even soul-crushing. She's obsessed with superficial things, and not in a light-hearted or harmless way. This is the kind of woman who measures life by appearances. How big the house is, how expensive the shoes are, how many followers she has, how many people are watching, liking, clapping. None of these things hold lasting weight. Yet in her world, they're treated like the meaning of life. Her self-worth is tied to what she can show, off not to who she is when no one's watching. And sure, on the surface, you might think, what's the harm in liking nice things? Nothing wrong with that, in moderation. But here's the real problem. It's not about the things, it's about what they represent to her. Status, approval, power, superiority. She judges herself, and, more dangerously, she judges Ubiston, what you can provide externally. You might find yourself feeling like a contestant in a game you never signed up for. Whether you earn 6 figures or 7, whether you drive a solid pickup or a luxury car, it's never enough, because someone out there always has more, and she's always scanning the horizon, looking for the next level to climb. But the Stoics warned us about this mindset long ago. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." When someone is enslaved by external validation, they are never satisfied. And if you stay too long in that world, you'll begin to lose touch with what truly matters: inner peace, genuine connection, and a life built on meaning, not appearance. Even the finest things in the world lose their shine when they're used to fill an emotional void that never ends. As we saw earlier, a woman obsessed with surface and status can never be truly satisfied. No matter how much she has, she always wants more, and if you stay too long, you'll lose your peace trying to fill a cup with no bottom. 5. She's obsessed with superficial things. The truth is, a woman who chases status, likes labels, and appearances will never feel full. No matter how much you pour in, it's never enough, because it's not fulfillment she's chasing. It's a temporary high, a brief rush followed by the same emptiness that brought her to it in the first place. It's like trying to fill a broken jar. Whatever you pour in seeps out just as fast. She's trapped in a loop of chasing external validation. And if you tie yourself to her journey, make no mistake, you'll be dragged along with it. You'll spend your energy trying to keep up, trying to match her expectations, trying to feel like you're enough, when the goalposts keep moving. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. Externals are indifferent. Marcus Aurelius called them things indifferent, not because they don't exist, but because they hold no power over your worth as a human being. They do not make you better. They do not make you worse. What defines you is not what you own or how you look. It's how you live, what you stand for, the values you embody. A woman who can't see past the surface will never see the real man behind it. She won't see your character. She won't recognize your discipline, your humility, or your sense of honor. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." By that measure, a woman obsessed with appearances is the poorest kind of companion, because she'll never know contentment, and she'll never offer you peace. And peace, my friend, is the one thing a Stoic man guards above all else. So if you find yourself beside a woman like this, someone more invested in how life looks than how it truly feels, remember this: you will lose yourself trying to keep up. You'll spend your energy, your dignity, and eventually your sense of self chasing shadows. The solution is simple, though never easy. Walk away, not out of resentment, not with anger, but with wisdom. Because a man who truly values his peace knows when it's time to leave a shallow life behind. 6. She can't admit she's wrong now. We arrive at the sixth and final sign, one that reveals itself not in major events, but in the small disagreements that spiral into chaos. She can't admit she's wrong, not ever. You could lay out every fact, speak calmly, explain with logic, even show proof so obvious a child would nod in agreement, and still she'd twist it, turn it, reframe it. Why? To make herself right. And if she can't win with logic, she changed the battleground. Suddenly, it's no longer about the actual disagreement. Now it's about how you made her feel, how you're being too critical, how you're attacking her, or worse, how you always do this, the original issue, buried under an avalanche of emotional redirection. At first, you might chalk it up to pride, or assume she's just having a rough day. But with time, you realize it's not a fluke, it's a pattern. She refuses to take ownership of her mistakes, no matter how minor. She'll defend a bad decision, a cruel comment, or even a clear oversight, until the very end. Because to her, being wrong equals being weak, and weakness, that's unacceptable. But the problem goes deeper than pride. Psychologically, people who can't admit fault often have fragile identities. Owning a mistake feels like a threat to their sense of self. So, they defend it fiercely, at all costs. But when someone makes being right the goal in every conversation, they sacrifice something far more valuable: growth, connection, trust. Because here's the truth: a person who can't acknowledge their faults can't learn. And someone who can't learn can't grow. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius said, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after." That's real wisdom. The ability to welcome correction not as an attack, but as an opportunity. But when you're with someone who rejects that principle, here's what happens. Your perspective is always on trial. Your reasoning is always questioned. You always end up being the one to bend. It's exhausting and it's lonely. Because a relationship like that stops being about understanding and becomes a power struggle. The irony: by refusing to ever admit fault, she loses the very thing Stoic men value most: the pursuit of truth. When someone can't say the simple words, "I was wrong," they're not just protecting their pride, they're building walls around their heart. Walls that keep out growth, understanding, and eventually love itself. 6. She can't admit she's wrong for a Stoic man. This is where clarity becomes non-negotiable. Because if truth and humility are values you live by, then they must also be the foundation of any relationship you choose to build. Not because your partner needs to be perfect, no one is, but because she needs to be brave enough to admit she's not. Without humility, there is no partnership, only quiet competition, a constant scorecard where every disagreement becomes a battle to win, not a chance to grow together. And life is far too short to spend it keeping score. Seneca once said, "Only time can heal what reason cannot." But In a relationship where reason is never allowed at the table, time doesn't heal, it only deepens the wounds. So what's the answer? Seek someone who understands that saying "I was wrong" isn't a weakness. It's one of the highest forms of inner strength, and if she can't offer you that, then the most respectful thing you can do for yourself and for the life of peace and wisdom you're building is to walk away, not out of resentment, but out of self-respect. 7. She disrespects your time. There's one thing life teaches all of us, especially as we grow older. Time is the one currency we never get back. Money, you can earn it again. Health, you can fight to regain it. But time, once spent, it's gone forever. That's why a woman who disrespects your time isn't just being careless. She's a threat to your peace of mind. And if you're not careful, she ends up stealing years from your life, not with malice, but with quiet disregard. It often starts small. I remember a man named Richard they used to work with in Houston, a successful contractor in his mid-50s, self-made, sharp, disciplined, respected, but in his personal life, it was a different story. Richard had been dating a woman named Elise. At first, she seemed like a dream, warm, beautiful, and knew exactly how to make a man feel special. But there was a pattern. She was always late. First 15 minutes, then 30, then 45. She'd cancel plans, last minute, a headache, a sudden errand, just not feeling it today. Sometimes, she simply wouldn't show up. No call, no message. Richard, being the patient man he was, brushed it off at first. He figured life gets busy. Things happen. We all understand that. But weeks turned into months. And without even realizing it, he started reshaping his life around her. He'd delay projects, skip fishing trips with his friends, wait at restaurants alone because she said she really wanted to see him that day, only to cancel without hesitation. I'll never forget sitting across from him one afternoon. She'd stood him up again. He was staring at his phone, shaking his head, and he said something I'll always remember. "Man, I feel like I'm always waiting." That's what happens when someone disrespects your time. They don't just leave you waiting physically. They keep you waiting mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And if you're not careful, they'll convince you that it's normal, that you are the one who needs to be more understanding, that this is just how things are. But a Stoic man knows better. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And Richard eventually realized, Elise wasn't that busy. She wasn't forgetful. She just didn't value his time because, in truth, she didn't value him. And he had allowed it by not valuing his own time first. So what's the solution? It's not shouting, not ultimatums. It's clarity. Respect your time as fiercely as you respect your life, because they are one and the same. A woman who respects you will respect your time. She'll show up when she says she will. She'll treat your hours, your presence, your energy as sacred, because they are. Epictetus once asked, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" Richard stopped waiting, and so should you. Time wasted is life wasted. Spend yours where it's valued. I'd love to hear your story, your experiences, your turning points, your victories. Please hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment below. Even just typing, "I love this," is enough to let me know you made it to the end. Your engagement helps this channel grow, and more importantly, it strengthens a community of men committed to clarity, character, and self-mastery. I'm leaving 2 more videos on screen so you can continue learning, reflecting, and building your path of Stoic wisdom. Thank you for spending your time with me. And remember, peace is your power. Guard it well. I'll see you in the next video.